This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland went to the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including Bally Sports Ohio without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. Preseason basketball is finally over. The fellas got a chance to get out there, break a bit of a sweat, try out some new things. And we are finally on the verge of regular season basketball. We are finally on the verge of doing this for real next week. I couldn't be more excited. I couldn't be more excited to be back. And I could not be more excited to be talking to my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing?
Doing good, buddy. I'd be doing better if the Gardos had not looked like they're probably going to be blowing it. Emmanuel Class A, just another rough one. Near the end of this one, and baseball is a cruel sport, man. You know, like I was talking to my brother last night after obviously the Miracle win, and I was kind of talking about how like basketball playoffs just feel like so much more of a meritocracy. You know, it's like okay, we're better over the longer stretch, so we win. Whereas baseball, it's like. It's just who messes up first, who's not perfect first, who hangs a slider, and it's just like, well, it's there's a little more randomness. Yeah, and then in an uncapped league, it's also just like you're just going up against teams with payroll 30 times what you're doing. So it's nights like this where I go, it feels good to be a basketball fan because it hurts to be a baseball fan.
Well, I was going to say, counter-programming a playoff baseball game, not the smartest.
Was not on our original bingo card when we booked this one, brother.
No, and I was going to keep this thing a little more evergreen by not talking about the live event because I'll just say this. No matter what the result is, Cleveland sports fans deserve the best because they are the best. Hopefully, they come back, but it seems like from an outside perspective that it's been a very fun season. As always, you prefer to see New York lose, but we'll keep things moving and we will focus on the Cleveland Cavaliers today. It was nice to finally be able to tune into one of these preseason game live rather than catching it after the fact. I kind of forgot just how bad preseason basketball is. Like it's very clear, whether it's watching the Cavs or watching some of the other teams. Guys are just out there, trying to break a little bit of a sweat, get into shape. I think the approach these days with preseason is almost more to use the first couple weeks of the regular season as preseason basketball. And let's start off there because I actually kind of expect that to be the case for the Cavs. One of the things that really kind of set in for me is just how different this is than years past. We've talked in the past about how the Cavs always got off to a very strong start because it always seemed like, the team's having 3 training camps and they're working hard to be, the most in shape for game one and kind of catch teams by surprise at the start of the year. Obviously, last year that didn't really come to fruition with some of the injuries that they have, but it kind of feels like a more traditional approach, or at least a more conventional approach with the Cavs kind of, working their way into the preseason. Do you agree with that assessment from me?
Kind of no, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean, Donovan Mitchell played until the final buzzer tonight. That hasn't happened in a preseason game for us in a while.
Yeah, but that's the final game.
But even like they played 3 of the 4 and played like heavy minutes in 2 of the 4. Like I feel like normally fourth quarter is even for the teams they've played, the second half has mostly been in the realm of the reserves, and it does feel like Kenny. Maybe it's not at full intensity, which maybe speaks to your point a little bit. But like, I do feel like Kenny's wanted them to play minutes. I think he talked about going into the third game about how they're going to ramp up and play more rotation style minutes in game 3, and then all the way up to what he's hoping for in game 4. And like, so I do think it's been more of a formal ramp up in terms of the rotation, but certainly, I mean, if the Detroit Pistons second unit and the Chicago Bulls second unit ends up holding pace with the Cavaliers starters in the regular season, I'd say Houston, we have a problem.
Well, traditionally speaking, if you want to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, you're going to put your second and third string unit out there. I think Ty Jerome can attest to that on the bench. That seems to be a bit of a formula. So that might be a regular season thing. Who knows? But I think I meant more so like, after the Detroit game, Garland was commenting on that lineup that they had with he and Mobley at the 5 and kind of some of the bench guys worked in, and said, this is the first time we've used that lineup. Like, it's not something that we've even done in scrimmages, right? And Kenny had mentioned how, they're working on sets and they're working on drills. There's not as much scrimmaging this time around. I definitely feel like, and you were correct in correcting me there, that it has been a ramp up to try to get these guys ready to play regular season minutes starting next week. But it does seem that it hasn't been as focused on, all right, let's run, let's get conditioning in, let's do all this kind of thing. It's more, all right, let's work on implementing the system. And I think what I've seen from the Cavs in preseason is, I won't call it lackadaisical because I feel like guys have been playing defense when they're on ball, but it looks like it's a veteran team that's just trying to get their wind under them a little bit in preseason, right? Like off-ball defense, I don't think it's been particularly strong. They'll gamble in passing lanes and stuff like that. But, for the most part, I think the focus has been on implementing the offense because I think there's some understanding that, hey, the defense is going to be there. And I also think back to preseasons in years past. Like I remember, I feel like we gave up 145 points to the Atlanta Hawks at one point, right? Like when we always would go into the season worrying about, oh man, was the defense of last year a mirage? Is it still going to be there? Is it going to be there now that we have two small guards and it's just always there? I'm not worried about that. If the defensive struggles continue for a month or two here, that would surprise me. But I really do feel like the focus of the preseason to this point has been on implementing the offense and trying to get Evan Mobley going.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of, I definitely think they've been intentional. It does feel like we've really seen the pace hold. Even when they have, whether they've played well or played poorly, they're at least kind of doing the same stuff. They're trying similar things. I think they're definitely they're kind of in that experimentation phase right now, figuring out how they're going to implement this stuff. But like, yeah, I don't know. I just don't think it's been I don't know if it has the same like energy of like it's been a really rough and tumble camp where they're really beating the crap out of each other. Like, no, I haven't got those impressions, but I do feel like it has been an intentional preseason and and definitely like there's just all these little things where you go, oh, we have a new coach now. And like they kind of, things like playing the starters into the end of regulation tonight. Like that was surprising to me and definitely you start feeling those differences.
Yeah, absolutely. And, getting into those differences, I think the most prominent one has just been how Evan Mobley's been utilized. Obviously, that has been something that's been a key talking point for the team, all throughout camp and throughout the preseason, is we want to be able to use Evan Mobley as a hub. And for me, we talk about kind of dismissing how the defense has looked and things like that. The most important thing to me is how Evan Mobley looks, right? We know that this team can have a very high floor for the regular season. I mean, hell, everything went wrong for them last year, and they still won 48 games. They still made it to the second round of the playoffs, even with basically nobody being healthy. We know that this team has a very high floor because they have very, very talented players. What we want to find out this season is, can we get the offense to once again click for the starters, and can we playoff-proof that offense? And I think you and I have been pretty consistent over the years of the way to do that is by Evan Mobley becoming a front court playmaker, being that guy with the length that can initiate offense and take pressure off of the guards, because you just can't win in the NBA in the postseason running offense solely through two guards. You need to have that front court playmaker. And, so far, I would say it does at least look through preseason that there are encouraging signs about Evan Mobley's ability to kind of fulfill that role and start to take those steps in the right direction.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun watching him play. Obviously, that the opener was the exclamation point. I want to say it was 19-point first half against. Was it against the Bulls? It was.
Yes.
They played them twice this preseason. But I think what I've seen that's been interesting is that I thought when they said Evan as the hub, I thought it would be more hard elbow touches where it's like he kind of posts up and they tossed him at the elbow. He reads the floor and they are, and then they're running split cuts on the weak side. Like that's kind of what I thought that Evan as hub would mean. And I think they've done some interesting stuff that I wasn't quite expecting, which is that he's catching the ball on the move a lot, dude. Like they are setting there's a lot of like dribble handoffs for him, or like plays where he's catching it on the wing and and then dribbling it into an inverted pick and roll to get that extra step where, like where the guard is. It's almost like when a tight end chips a defensive end. Like you don't gotta like nail it, but like you definitely gotta like, if you just knock them off their equilibrium for a second, then all of a second the quarterback has the extra window to throw. That's been Darius Garland, Jalen Tyson on a couple plays tonight, Donovan Mitchell setting these top of arc kind of like rub screens almost for Evan, where he gets that one step and then all of a sudden the handle is really strong and really solid, and he's using his length to finish around them. Like, I've been really impressed by how they're kind of mechanizing his touches from outside the paint to get him easy looks inside the paint.
Yeah, I think my favorite possessions from him have been those downhill ones. I think that's where you're starting to see the improved handle as well as the improved strength really kind of come into play. He's had a couple and ones throughout the preseason where, it's two dribbles in from the 3-point line, not getting bumped off of his spot, going kind of through the defender, not aiming for their chest, but at least saying, all right, I'm entitled to my driving lane and maintaining that driving lane through contact and finishing. It's been really, really encouraging to see. And honestly, he threw probably the best pass I've ever seen.
Bro, it was unbelievable.
that one in that situation where, to Ty Jerome, which, the ability to throw that pass is impressive, but I think it demonstrates the improved core strength and his strength overall to be driving kind of full speed towards the basket, make that adjustment in midair and whip that pass out to the corner. I don't think that he had a level of strength to be able to execute that pass, even if he could see it in the past. That to me is a really, really encouraging sign. Like,
and his just general ball, you can tell the work on the ball skills has really been there. Like the dribble just feels that 5 to 10% tighter. It doesn't feel like a total sea change on that front, but like part of the value of tightening that dribble means that when you are going full speed flying at the hoop, that you can kind of corral you have the ball in control enough to make that crazy wrap pass at full speed to the corner. Like that's a LeBron type of pass. Like those are the kind of passes that the best, big ball handling wings in the league make. So the fact that Evan made that, it's one pass, it's not like a total sea change, but like it is indicative of his growth on that front.
Yeah, it really is. And, you mentioned like the screening they're doing on the perimeter. I've been interested to see that, sometimes they do go into a 5-out alignment, even with both bigs out there. And just because they're out there and setting screens and you have guys like Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and even Dean Wade, who got up his threes in this game, they're all threats to shoot. And that's going to cause the defender to come up. Just because it's Jared Allen at the 3-point line and he's not a 3-point threat himself, if he's setting a screen for a man, the defensive big is going to have to get involved in that action. So I'm very interested in monitoring the kind of those creative ways to generate space, even without, 4 or 5 spacers on the floor at any given time. And I think Evan Mobley's ability to kind of get downhill and attack with the dribble is going to make defenders respect him a little bit more, because you don't want to give him that momentum. We've seen similar things happen to Giannis, right? Like you're not just plain drop and hiding in the paint, because he's going to go out there and kill you. Same thing happens with Scotty Barnes and Paolo Banchero, guys that aren't reliable shooters. You defend those guys differently because of their ball skills. And what I love seeing with Evan Mobley is just how decisive everything's been. Like, he's not really second guessing what he's trying to do offensively. And I think there's going to be times where, the touch isn't there, where, he misses a couple looks in a row. But I like that he knows what he's doing on the catch, and he's going out there and executing. There seems to be less processing out there. And I remember early last year, that was one of the things that we talked about, that it just felt like Mobley was thinking too much on a lot of these offensive possessions. And I don't know if, it's the strength, if it's the work he put in on his offensive game, or some combination of all of the above. He just seems like a more confident player out there.
Yeah. I mean, and maybe it's the running starts, maybe it is the fact that he's catching the ball in motion a lot. He's not being asked to sit, survey, face up a guy, and then try to put a dribble combo on him. It's, hey, we're going to get you a running start. The same stuff we've kind of been begging for Darius and Donovan to get, which is, catch the ball with advantage. I feel like the offense is a little better built to do that than it was in years past. And that's where Evan really can play instinctually, and he kind of stops being cursed with options, because it's like, hey, I got a freaking runway to the basket, and slow-footed centers or smaller fours that aren't going to challenge me if I have a step on them, that's just a win for them every time. So just more inverted pick and roll, I think, is really, really fun. More, catching on the move and then using his ball skills. It just feels like a nice way to do the give Evan reps in the middle of the floor experiment without it being kind of just so obvious. I think all of our ideas of what Evan as offensive hub is a little obvious, and this is not something that I was expecting to see as much, and I'm definitely enjoying it.
Yeah, and I think these experimental reps are important. I think there's going to be nights where Evan Mobley as hub results in kind of what we saw against Chicago here tonight, which is, I didn't think his offensive touch looked particularly good. Early in the game, you could tell he was fighting with the ball a little bit, struggled on some finishes, started off 1 from 5 from the free throw line. It just seemed
finished
like
6 for 12.
But then I was about to say, he started to get a little bit more of his touch as the game went on. But I think there's going to be nights where Mobley as a hub results in a lot of these assists, right?
8 assists, 0 turnovers tonight.
Leading playmaker for them. He made life easier. Other guys were getting the scoring opportunities off of that. Whereas other nights, guys might be playing a little bit off of Mobley, they're respecting Garland and Mitchell more and trying to take them out of it, and that's going to generate scoring opportunities for Mobley. That's what we want to see, right? Taking what the defense, creating advantage and making the defense choose between Mobley and the guards. Whereas in the past, it's basically been, okay, if we're taking away the roller and we're bottling up the guards and we're trapping and we're attacking them in those ways, we can kind of neuter the Cavs offense. They don't have something else to go to. And if they are able to successfully, integrate Mobley's playmaking and it gets to the level we need it to be by mid-April in however many months away that is, that to me is the secret sauce. That is what takes us from a very good regular season team to a team that can make noise in the playoffs. And that to me is the most important thing, because we can talk about getting out in transition and how that's going to give, Mobley some easier looks when he's out there with the two bigs and things like that. That goes away in the playoffs. You're going to play a slower brand of basketball in the playoffs. And the Cavs, the one thing that we know that the Cavs can do at an elite level is play defense. And that usually requires both bigs to be out there. So if we're not going to be able to play as fast in the postseason and both bigs are going to need to be out there so that we can put our best foot forward, the only way that the offense is going to be viable is if Mobley becomes a more dynamic offensive player. And I think that's why that's my primary focus right now. That's my main takeaway from the preseason is at least some signs are there, because the rest of the stuff is straightforward. We know what Jared Allen is. We know what Donovan Mitchell can bring to the table. Darius Garland, it's basically going to be, is he going to be healthy? Is he going to get back to the level?
I think it's important that I stop you right now and let you have some fun with how Darius has looked in the preseason.
I want to get to Darius a little bit later because I just think Mobley and the
Well, you didn't have it in the rundown, so I just felt like I had to at least cue it up.
Well, I don't even feel the need to gloat because this is just who he is, Carter. This is Darius Garland, baby. This is healthy Darius. No, we'll definitely get to him a little bit later. But I just really wanted to kind of drive that point home with Mobley, because I really do think that is kind of the key for the Cavs to be able to do their best work in the postseason, just like Zoom helps you do your best work with Zoom AI Companion, because only you can do your best work. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible paid plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion. You can tell I'm a little rusty with the segues. I don't know if it's late night, the jet lag, or just, some time off.
You're on Sahara Desert time.
I truly am. I'm still working my way back. That 6-hour time change is a little tough on the old body here. I do want to get into the pace because I think that is kind of the really interesting thing to touch on. Carter, I want to drop a stat for you though, because there's a really important point that I want to make with the pace, and I think this illustrates it well. The Cavs had 11 lineups that played at least 50 minutes last year. How many of them do you think would be top 6 in pace among teams last season of those 11?
3.
It was actually 9.
Wow.
And a lot of them, honestly, would be like fastest pace. The Cavs starting lineup with Max Strus would have been the 3rd highest pace in the league. A lot of these lineups, especially the 2 big ones, did play with a decent amount of pace last season. And I do think that it's important to kind of differentiate between, the pace and tempo, because one of the biggest things I've noticed for the Cavs throughout the preseason is, what we've been wanting to see, getting into sets earlier, creating advantage, right? And it's not necessarily getting shots up 7 seconds into the clock. It's about creating the opportunity to go to second and third actions and generate better shots. Because when it comes to pace, man, like, as much as I want to see it go up, the difference between where the Cavs were last season in pace and quickest team in the league is 5 possessions. It's only 5 possessions in an entire game, man.
Well, I don't know. Austin Carr said if we play at this pace, we'll be about 20, 30 possessions faster a game. So
I think AC might have also accused Buzelis of being of European descent rather than a Chicago native, which I really, really enjoyed John Michael correcting him on that one. Because I actually assumed the same thing as well, because I don't watch college basketball.
He didn't play college basketball. He was a G League Igniter, so it's even harder to know.
How about that? This is why we are the draft experts. But my kind of central point is I just think, so much of it is, can the Cavs play at this pace? Can the starting lineup maintain their defensive identity if they're playing up tempo? Where a lot of these lineups really did kind of play at a higher pace last year. The main thing, and what I'm going to say, is when the game is on the line, when it's in the clutch time, we got so painfully slow. We ran that clock down. We did not attack with tempo. We made the job too easy for the defense. And, I'm going to be a little tongue-in-cheek here, but the one possession that we had at the end of the game against Chicago, I think there was like 7 seconds left on the shot clock before we dribbled near the 3-point line. That, to me, is going to be the most interesting thing. Not what we do over 46 minutes, but at the end of the games, are we going to revert to old habits, especially early in the season, or are we going to be able to kind of stick with this new identity?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is I like your differentiation between pace and tempo, because I do think you can play fast without playing with good tempo, and like you can get shots up and juice your possessions per game without actually like running into your sets. And like one thing I've really liked seeing thus far about the way the team is pushing is because whoever is getting the board is pushing and pushing with such aggressiveness, we're landing in more cross matches. We're landing in more spots where the defense starts the possession 10%, 15% compromised and has to figure things out. And like, again, like all basketball offense is creating an advantage and seeing, and, you know, creating as good of an advantage as you can and seeing if you can capitalize off that window that you've opened. So every little step along the way opens that window a little wider. And like, so I think while yes, I agree with you that end of game stuff is really going to matter. And I'm really going to be interested to see, you know, whether they revert to those bad habits. I still think that, yeah, they might have had some lineups that played pretty fast last year, but like, this is a spot where like, I got to be captain eye test and be like, but they weren't freaking sprinting the ball up the court after the board.
It looked totally different.
And it just looks different, you know. And
it does.
And I think that comes down to that tempo conversation you kind of made, which is like I just think they're pushing it up a little bit more aggressively, and like even if it's gonna slow down at end of game and tight games because that's just what it's done over the history of basketball. And I think that if we are hoping for them to be 7 seconds or less Suns all the way through the game, you know, obviously, you know, if we're expecting them to be turbo button all the way through, like cool, but I don't think it's likely. But I just basically I want if they're going to be a top, you know, I talked to Nam on the pod that he guested on while you were gone. And we just kind of said like, where do we want to see them land? And like both of us were like pretty firm, like top 10 at least. And pace would feel really, really good and feel like a sea change. And like what I want to see is if they're top 10 in pace for the regular season, I want to see them top 10 in pace in clutch time, like relative to their peers, because they're going to be slower, but just relative to their peers, be near the top.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. And, you know, you talk about the 7 second or less Suns. It feels like you go back and you watch those games, it feels like they're playing so fast and they're getting those shots up. And then you look at the pace data and it would be so much slower than any team in the league. Like it'd be a lot slower than last year's Cavs, right? So, you know, pace is a two-way street because there's another team that is kind of helping you dictate what the pace for a game is going to be and how many possessions are in that game. But it really does come down to tempo, right? It's, you know, valuing every possession, playing with a purpose, trying to get out in transition or even off of made baskets, because, you know, over an 82 game season, teams are going to jog it back a little at times.
Cavs got the Bulls a couple times tonight where there was like, oh wait, we have a 3-on-2 or 2-on-1 because they just weren't paying attention.
Yeah, and you know, even if they recover to kind of that initial guy that you're head manning the ball to, that defense might be destabilized, and you know, you're able to work it around and you know, once again kind of create a better advantage or you know, get a quality shot at the rim. Like that to me is what the biggest difference is going to be. The reason I brought that up is because I think some people think, oh, there's going to be, you know, this kind of baker's dozen of possessions that are just added to the Cavs and it's going to inflate their stats, where, you know, really when you're
dozen,
you know, it's late, baby. I'm running on fumes, but you know, there's going to be 10 plus possessions here, where in reality, like I said, if you're going from last year's pace to the fastest in the league and you're adding those 5 possessions, unless you're force feeding those 5 possessions to like a specific player, it's not going to have a big effect on like counting stats. Where I do think it's going to have an effect is on efficiency, because I think they're going to be able to generate better quality shots as a result of being, you know, pushing the pace, initiating earlier in the clock, the movement they have, head manning the ball, pulling up in transition, having quality shooters like Darius Garland take more 3-pointers. That's the kind of stuff that I think is going to have an impact on efficiency. And it might actually help guys like a Garland, you know, maintain kind of the same scoring output that we've seen while still empowering someone like Evan Mobley to take a larger role in the offense.
Yeah. I think that, again, I mean, we've been asking for it for years. Our dear friend Steve Jones, friend of the pod, has been asking for it for years. And like, I do think we're going to see it. and it does feel like even in like I had my eye out for the third and fourth quarter of this game because it's like, it's fourth preseason game. It's not super exciting. I don't think their defensive focus was like elite. Let's just be kind and say it wasn't elite, but still Darius would get an outlet and start sprinting down the floor. Still Donovan would start sprinting down the floor. So it does feel like, hey, like the message is sinking in a little more than maybe it has in the past. And like, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if it holds.
On that subject, you know what? I think this was one of the first times that I didn't yell at the TV at any point for Darius passing up a three.
No,
I think he took
10.
I think he took every one that he should have taken. Like when the defense went under, he took one. If they're sagging off in transition, he took those pull-up threes in transition. It was really, really great to see. We had 5 players take 7 or more threes tonight, and like to me, that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for in preseason. I'm not
Max
watching
didn't
the
even
score.
play.
Yeah, exactly. And Max is someone that's going to get him up, but it's really encouraging to see someone like Dean Wade in particular go out and take as many threes as he did, because we know that he can be efficient in a smaller role, but whether or not he can kind of, I think he has the skill set to be a volume shooter. I don't know if he's got the confidence and the mentality to consistently do that. And, you hear that right in the locker room interviews where Dean's like shaking his head and Jarrett's yelling at him to shoot more threes. Like I like nights like tonight where Dean goes out there and he takes 9, because, he has done this in the regular season. He has 14 career games of 8 or more threes attempted. But we need to see this more consistently, where if he's open, he's not passing them up. And I thought he even took some contested shots tonight.
Yeah, he looked good. He had a couple side steppers and, pump and shoot like possessions. I mean, Justin, it's early in the year, but it's already time for our annual Dean's looking pretty good kind of conversation where it's like, I just think Dean at his best is like, of the outside of the starters, is like weirdly like not the highest ceiling. That's not the right way to frame it, but like he is the guy who, like, when it's going right, you go, what a perfect hand in glove fit for what this roster needs.
It's the other side. He's a floor racer for a lot of lineups, right? Like his ability to rebound, because he really helps the rebounding numbers. You look at cleaning the glass. I think he was like in the 94th percentile in terms of the difference in defensive rebounding on the floor versus off the floor. Like, he makes a huge difference there. We saw it tonight. His ability to be a rim protector is sneaky good. Like, he just completes a lot of lineups, and he's someone that is really, really helpful when you're trying to stagger both Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, because he works so well with both of them. And as we saw, he does have the versatility to slide over to the 3. I wouldn't be surprised if in certain matchups, Kenny does end up closing with Dean Wade. Whether that's at the 4 or at the 3, depending on what the matchup is asking for, that's an option they can go to, right? And I think the biggest difference this year versus, previous years with Dean Wade, obviously the main thing is he going to be able to stay healthy? Because he hasn't been healthy in the postseason the last few years. But the biggest kind of change for me is it seems like his spot in the rotation's already solidified. Like, it seems like he is ahead of George Niang. He is ahead of the other options at the power forward
I think
position.
he's ahead of Isaac Okoro, maybe.
He could potentially be ahead of Okoro or right there with him. And, if we are going with a 10-man rotation, kind of the 7, 8, 9 guys are probably going to be pretty much attached to the hip. And, who plays more is going to be determined on how they're playing. But it does seem like Dean is going to be kind of one of those first guys out there, and someone that Kenny really likes having in his lineups.
Well, one cool thing about Kenny as a coach so far has been how wildly transparent he's been, and like, he is, like, he kind of, like, thus far, he's kind of told you what he's thinking, like,
yeah,
you can kind of, if you're really paying attention, like, and you're watching those post-practice media availabilities and things like that, and you see him talking about how, he really believes in Dean, and Dean's the plus minus god. Like, anytime a coach is talking about a guy being like a plus minus star, it means they like playing them. like that's just like, it's kind of one of those, like, coaching truisms that like if they have good lineup data, coach likes.
It means he would enjoy listening to this podcast, I feel.
Yeah, probably a little bit. And even like, guys like Tristan Thompson were gassing Dean up during training camp about saying he's one of their most important players. So it just feels like the tea leaves coming out of camp, out of preseason, is that Dean's going to matter. And like the fact that he's getting all these minutes of the three, when I was kind of curious if that would be a bygone era of the JB era, where it's like, okay, that's enough. Three, two power forwards in a center lineups. I wondered if that would be something that Kenny just wouldn't consider doing, and Dean would be purely a 4. And like, obviously, Strus getting hurt, with the hip injury, throws off our sample here. So you don't really know, but like, sure seems like Kenny's pretty comfortable with Dean Wade, small forward.
Yeah, and honestly, he should be. Like the data does say that this has been something
I've always liked it.
I always think, even though he is able to rebound really well, I always felt that was best as a 4. He's probably more of a 4-3. The fact that he can kind of flex to be a 4-5 at times is a bit of a luxury. But I've never loved the Dean Wade at the 5 minutes as kind of the sole big. But yeah, it does give them flexibility. It gives Kenny lineup versatility. And, I just realized with how long I was gone, I haven't been on the mic since your Kenny interview. You did a terrific job, buddy. I got to give you some props there. And, I do really like how transparent Kenny is. And my favorite thing about the transparency is he's giving you information on what's going into those decisions. He's not just telling you about, this is kind of what I'm thinking, this is what I'm planning on going with. He's telling you, hey, the lineup data says this, we do this when I go to this combination, right? Like, he's really kind of letting you in on that thought process. And I don't know how long that's going to last, but that does give us a lot of kind of valuable information from a decision-making standpoint, because I feel like on this podcast so often, we've kind of worked backwards from, okay, like, this was the decision that we noticed in a game. Here's some of the data that might kind of say, okay, this is what they were thinking in this instance. It does kind of, give us insight there. And, we love process over results when it comes to this podcast. And I just feel like more insight into the process is a very good thing.
Yeah. Again, we thus far are not having to guess what Kenny values too much. Why he's making calls that he's making. Like, again, perhaps the transparency goes down once we get into, go time, or first time they hit a 4-game losing streak or whatever it may be. But like right now, I feel like we really are learning a lot about what this coaching staff values and the way this team's going to want to play. Yeah,
I completely agree. And, let's kind of transition a little bit to kind of what we expect from the regular season and the start of the season. Actually, let's do a little bit of Darius, because he has been really good in the preseason.
Don't you dare. Enjoy your time.
I'm pretty damn happy to see him out there, shooting threes. I think, he just looks so much better physically in terms of his shiftiness. He's explosive again, right? Like, he's getting by guys. And I think it's already kind of manifested in so many ways, where you just see him being able to create those advantages that we're talking about, finding the passing lanes. I think his passing hasn't been reflected in the assist numbers, but he's made some really brilliant looks. And, even just something as small as the chemistry with Sam Merrill. Like, I felt like the lineup data with those two and their minutes together last year, it just never felt great. And I feel like there was a couple times where, like, Sam was almost surprised that the ball came to him. He's like, okay, how did Darius kind of find me in this spot? It just felt like the chemistry was so much better with those two. And it should be good. He's a brilliant passer that's able to, get into the lane, kick it out, spray out to three. Like, that is a combination that absolutely should work. They ran a Spain pick and roll with Sam, Darius, and Jarrett, where Sam was screening for Allen, and they didn't get a shot off the initial action, but they continued kind of rotating around. Sam found Allen under the basket for an easy dunk. Like,
that was cool.
those are the type of stuff we just didn't see a lot of. Like, I feel like a lot of Sam's off-ball movement and the movement shooting was just kind of stationed above the arc or parked in the corner. Having him, in the key, setting a back screen for Jared and popping out, like that's the type of utilization that we just didn't see in the past. And I just feel like if Darius is playing this confident and he's not passing up threes and he's making life easier for everybody else, I just feel like once again he's kind of that tide that raises all boats offensively at a level that nobody else does.
Yeah, I feel like he's kind of an off-schedule player. He's on his own rhythm, he's on his own metronome compared to the rest of the team, and part of that is what makes him really cool. But like when he doesn't, I felt like last year was like almost like a lead guitarist playing a different song than the rest of the band, so when he would do these crazy no look passes or these some of the interior passes that he has kind of cut his teeth on, a lot of times it was just like hitting guys in the hip or like not it just didn't feel smooth or clean. And I feel like thus far what I'm seeing is the kind of the return of the good side of that coin, of the defense wasn't ready, but the guy getting the pass was, and he's in just the right spot, and Darius froze the guy at just the right time, and like now it's a great look. Like I just felt like there was a lot of those plays that just felt discordant or off rhythm, and like
honestly, we can take it back to that Mobley pass to Ty Jerome, where he was in control, the strength was there, and he was able to execute that play. Darius trying to make that kind of play last season, it just seemed like, on the drive, he wasn't fully in control, the strength wasn't there, and it would have been a turnover, right? Like it would have gone off someone's legs or he wouldn't be able to get it there. I completely agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. And like, I don't think, I still think, I don't ever think Darius is going to be an elite isolation scorer. I just don't think that's his game. I don't think that is where he's best served, because he's not hyper, he's not hyper explosive, and he's small. So like those things make that an uphill battle. But like being able to take advantage, use his stop and start ability, his 3-point shot, his handle to generate angles that he can then exploit, like that shouldn't have gone away. He just got hurt.
Yeah.
And it just feels like that's back. Now the 3-point shooting, that's been a cherry on top. I've liked the way Kenny's gotten him some off-ball looks. There's some possessions where even when Donovan's not out there, they have Karras bringing it up, or there were a couple possessions where Jalen Tyson brought it up while Darius Ty Jerome, where Darius was lurking in the corner and gets a pin down set for him. And again, that goes back to my I don't need Darius to start every possession with a high pick and roll. In fact, I don't want that. I want Darius to catch the ball with advantage so he can use the things he's really, really good at and hide some of the things he's just okay at. So yeah. I think that all that has kind of contributed to a really strong preseason for him, and it does feel like a big bounce back year is coming.
Yeah, it's funny how you mentioned how it felt off schedule in a bad way last year. There just feels like there's more structure to what they're running offensively, and there's just less room for kind of that off schedule play. And one of the guys that comes to mind when I think of that is Caris LeVert, because Caris is kind of that ultimate off schedule player, right? Like he's someone that is able to go out there and generate buckets. When things have kind of died down and there's not movement, and that's been so valuable in the past, right? I think we're hoping probably, Darius and Donovan play about 70 games this year. If they just miss 12 each, I think we're happy with that. Caris has been so valuable in those games where one of the guards is out and he's able to handle the ball a little bit more. I'm just going to be really interested this year where, you do kind of have some other alternatives. I kind of feel like in the games where a guard isn't missing and Caris is in kind of his normal role, it just kind of feels like they don't kind of need a ceiling raiser player off the bench. They just need someone that's going to take care of the basketball. And to me, Ty Jerome is a little bit more of that player. And I'm going to be very curious to see if Kenny kind of has a little bit of a leash for Caris where, hey, we appreciate you, competing on defense. The playmaking is always going to be there. So there's always some floor to your play. Well, the nights where he just doesn't have it offensively, and normally you can kind of figure that out within the first half. I wouldn't be surprised to see second half Ty Jerome gets a lot of kind of those ball handling opportunities.
Yeah, I don't know. I still think it's going to be Karras getting heavy minutes as the sixth man of the team. Just his size,
for the
his ball
most part,
handling.
yeah.
I just and like I think Jerome's been solid, but I don't think he's been so good that I don't think he's been better than LeVert by any means in the in this preseason. And like
No.
I feel like Karras is probably the guy who like the one high minutes player who I feel like his minutes are the most precarious. So I agree with you on that front.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I think there's a bunch of guys underneath that are going to be nipping at those minutes toes. Plus, if they play 10 guys, there's just less minutes for a six man to get in the first place. So it might feel that way even if nothing is actually changing that much in terms of like, their how they want to deploy Karras. It just might be one of those things. But I don't know. I just think I haven't seen anyone on the bench, with the exception of maybe Dean, look like, oh, I'm ready to take a big jump in responsibility.
Yeah, this is probably on me for not making my point clearly enough. Like, I do think Karras is going to be the sixth man in terms of minutes, and I think on average, like when the guard is out, he has a lot of value. On nights where he has it going offensively, he can make a huge difference, right? Like he's played a pivotal role in some of their biggest regular season wins because, when he has it going, he makes a really big difference. I'm talking just about kind of like those really tough nights where it just isn't falling for him and he seems out of rhythm. I agree. Ty Jerome hasn't looked clear cut better than him. Ty Jerome, I don't think has the ceiling to make that kind of impact that Karras LeVert can on the nights that he has it going. But I feel very comfortable when he has the ball. Like even in preseason, as he's getting his legs kind of under him, he's not going to make it kind of explosive offensive plays, but he's going to take good care of the basketball. He's going to get the ball to guys in the right spots. He's going to do all the things that you want kind of in a game manager kind of way. And if we're assuming that a guy's going to be out there with one of the two guards and one of the bigs, like you kind of have those anchors of the lineups and you just kind of need guys that fill in the rest of it. And I feel like Ty Jerome might be kind of a more steadying hand, and that might be what kind of those lineups call for, rather than, those nights where Karras is a little Jekyll and Hyde from a scoring perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's just more options. They're playing, they have more dudes to call on than they did last year, especially on the perimeter. It very quickly became CPJ or bust last year. They should have a bit more optionality here, both at the guard position and at the wing position, in terms of, hopefully a healthy Dean at the three. Hopefully Jalen Tyson shows some minutes. And by the way, he got his first run with real rotation players today with Okoro and Strus out. And I thought he looked pretty darn good. Not great, but good. I'm
gonna make my Tristan Thompson comp with him again. He just looks better with more talent around him. He just does everything to complete lineups. I love him.
I thought he was really good in this game, and it does feel like I'm already kind of prepared to be grumpy about his assist totals looking lower than they should, because this guy has made so many nice passes, and no one makes shots off of his passes, and I don't know why.
Oh, we're going to be tracking potential assists, baby.
Oh, baby. Let's do it, Jeff. Let's do it.
It is fun to have a lot of options, and it is fun to get through a preseason where there isn't kind of a glaring injury concern, right? Chris Fedor mentioned today that the expectation is Max Strus is going to be available to play for Toronto. It's nice to see Sam Merrill go out there and get some run. I understand he's dealing with wrist tendonitis. But before we get out of here, let's get some final predictions in, because this is going to be our last podcast before the regular season. Carter, win totals. I'll let you go first, but I feel like we're going to pick the same number.
Oh, you feel like we're going to pick the same number? Because I kind of forgot where I was. They were over under, I believe, is at 48.5.
Correct.
I think that is a criminally low number. I am going to settle in at 54.
Okay. Good. I'm glad I can go a little bit higher. I'm going 55. I do think that it's going to be a bit of a slower start to the regular season. I think it's going to be the Cavs kind of using those first couple weeks like the preseason. My hope is that, we get out of some of these games early in the year where we're like, oh, it didn't feel great, but at least we got a win. Similar to, 22-23, where the Cavs got off to a good start, but, there's an overtime win against the Wizards. And there's, I think there was like a comeback win against Charlotte in there. Like games that you just don't feel great about, but you ultimately get the win. Like through 30 games, it wouldn't surprise me if we're like 18-12, 19-11. And some good wins and some bad losses out there, just as they like try to implement the new season. I kind of expect a bumpy start a little bit, but even
19-11 is a pretty good start, Justin.
it's funny that 18-12 feels so much worse than 19-11 when it's really just one
it's like
game.
Two
difference.
wins for every loss, almost, man. We're gonna have a heck of a year if we start 19-11, and that's a slow start.
Let's go with 18-12. I still think we're going to be good. I'm still predicting 55 wins. I just think it's going to be a little uneven at the start. Hopefully that first loss isn't at Toronto because, I can't handle that.
I know, buddy.
Seeding. Where do you think the Cavs finish in the regular season?
I think we are going to be the 2 seed.
I also think that, especially when you look at some of the injuries kind of across the league. Nick's trying to implement so many pieces and Philly announcing basically that Embiid and Paul George aren't playing any back-to-backs. Paul George injury scare. Like I just think that the Cavs have a pretty good path to get a 2 seed there. Where do you think we're going to finish in terms of the postseason? How far are we going this year, baby?
I am going to say the same. I think they're going to be a second-round team, and I think that the other team, like where I'm not that like afraid of how the East beefed up in terms of what to expect for the regular season. I do think some of those teams are better equipped in the postseason than they were in years past. And I just think, but here's my caveat to that. If you're going to yell at me for being a downer, I think that's the most likely outcome for almost every team except the Celtics, because I just think there's a lot of parity in the upper middle class of the Eastern Conference. And I just think, and like, even teams like Indy that you don't really like at all, I still think are really dangerous and can beat a lot of teams.
I like them.
No,
I just don't have them in our tier.
No, you've been trashing them all off season. Yeah, you have. And I would need you to take accountability for the things you say on this podcast.
Why start now?
I know. But like, I think that with that said, I just think almost every team, like if you were going to ask me what I think they're going to be, I'm going to be like, probably a second round team. And but like, I think 6 teams have a real shot at Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. For how much parity there is, seeding really matters. I heard a wild stat on the right time Vinny Goodwill had, where since 95, there's only been one champion that wasn't at least a 2 seed. Like, your path to the NBA Finals just gets so much easier when you have that higher seed. So I think the Cavs are going to make an Eastern Conference Finals this year, especially if the prediction that they're going to be a 2 seed is correct. I think having home court in the second round would be a big deal. Avoiding Boston until the conference finals would be a big deal. Final thing before we get us out of here, Carter. I want some stat line predictions from the core 4.
All right. I think Donovan is going to average like 25-5, maybe 27-5, but like, I think pretty much a run back year over year.
I'm going 26-4 for him.
Okay. I'm going to go for Evan. I'm going to say 19, 10-4.
Ooh. I was going to go 19-10-3. So
I know I'm throwing an extra assist in there.
I like that. I like that. That would feel really good. I kind of hope that like start of the year, it's like 18-10-3, and then like we get that post All-Star break where he's averaging over 20 points per game, because last year really he was an 18 point per game scorer. His minutes were just down to 30 a game. Like that was the kind of big difference for him. So I think starting off the year scoring at the same rate, but doing it with more self-creation and then, you know, getting to another level post All-Star break. I think that would be pretty good for me. Darius, I'm going to go 23-7, but really that 7 is just me rounding. I think it'll be more kind of like 7.5. What about you?
I was going to say 23-8.
Okay, there you go.
And then
you're
Jarrett, I will settle on almost the exact same stats of about 16, about 10 to 11. But I expect his field goal percentage to go back up to the sterling 67-68% it was at his career best.
Yeah, I think he'll probably be just under 15. And, you know, part of this is I do think these guys are going to play fewer minutes this year. So, you know, maybe the increased efficiency is going to help them kind of maintain these stats. But I do think it's possible for all 4 of these guys to get rolling because these stats we predicted are basically what they did for the last like 45 games of the 22-23 season. I think that they can get back to there. It's going to be about how. It's going to be about Evan Mobley's growth, the self-creation, how it looks together when all 4 are on the court. We know that, you know, staggering is possible, but we're going to start finding out about this team, and I'm really, really excited for that. I'm really excited to talk about basketball that matters.
Justin.
They're going to hashtag let them know. Big thanks to everyone that tuned in live on YouTube. We really do appreciate you guys staying up with us. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.